आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, नमस्कार. Sir, we have achieved soft landing on the moon. India is on the moon.
India, I reached my destination, and you too. Chandrayaan 3's first message.
Fantastic. What an amazing week this has been. Phenomenal milestone, really.
We just witnessed history
In the
on
making.
23rd of August,
Yeah.
when we became the first country to plant the flag on the moon's south pole.
I mean, it's been really something to watch with bated breath over the last few weeks for this development. And again, kudos to ISRO, kudos to all of the scientists, everyone who made this happen. I remember when Chandrayaan 2 crash landed on the moon. I remember watching those visuals of the director, Mr. Sivan, being consoled by Prime Minister Modi, and then following the speech and thereafter, right? I mean, it was a sad time, really. But that was 4 years ago, and we've bounced back stronger than ever. The first to land on the south side, just the fourth among nations in the world to ever, reach the moon. Fantastic stuff. Really, really fantastic.
And this also just comes in few days after Russia's rover crash landed in the moon.
Well, this is cutting edge tech, right? I mean, we often forget the kind of complexity it involves. Like I've said, I can barely control my TV remote on most days, right? And here is, a satellite that's orbiting so many thousands of kilometers away and acting out in very precise detail and movement according to what has to be done. Phenomenal. I mean, it just inspires you to strive for excellence, no matter what you're doing, because literally, if you can reach the moon, what else is out of reach for us, right? So fantastic. I mean, I think the nation owes a debt of gratitude to ISRO for inspiring us all. All right. Anyway, let's get on with this roundup. Welcome to the Startup Operator Roundup. I'm Roshan Karyappa.
And I'm Gunjan Saha, and together we bring you the biggest headlines from India's growing startup ecosystem. Now, last week was not only a momentous occasion for ISRO, but for the startup community as well, because there were several Indian companies such as Paris Defense and MTR Technologies that supplied critical components for the Chandrayaan 3 mission.
Wow. Amazing.
And we have space tech has just become a buzzworthy term. I think, let's say year and a half.
Yeah. No, we've been talking about it on the podcast for about a year, right? I mean, we talk about, Pixel, Skyroot, Agnikul, all of those folks. Fortunately, still trying to coordinate with some of these founders to get them on the pod. Hopefully, we will have them soon. But, this is a phenomenal thing. I've often said that in the next 5-10 years, India is going to become an industry space superpower, right? We're going to become very significant because we have the technology, we have the talent, and also importantly, we have the geopolitics. And, people often say that, hey, for a country with as low per capita income, so many people below the poverty line, should we be investing in space? Well, first of all, I think it's a matter of perspective, right? I mean, we've invested maybe 600 crores on this, which is less than what it would take to build anything significant, right? I mean, let's say a Hollywood blockbuster would take $100 million. So far less than that. And if you were to consider infrastructure itself, over the last 8-9 years, we've built infrastructure at a tremendous pace, right? I mean, simply the amount of road that we've built over a course of, 2 or 3 years has been greater than what we built over 20 years. And all of this during COVID and whatnot, right? So, progress is on all fronts, right? I don't think you can kind of stall science and innovation to say that, hey, let's all people catch up on, health and, more human development indices, and then, we will do this, right? And scientific innovation has a way of flowing downstream to other technologies. It could be in your microwave or your washing machine, etc. Right? You never know. And the more developed nations are not, unwise or foolish to spend on science exploration and so on, right? I mean, obviously they do recognize the material benefit as well. But most of all, the more important benefit is, inspiring the next generation of Indians that it is possible, right? I mean, imagine 10, 15, 20 years from now, I won't be surprised if the scientists and engineers of that time are looking back on this day and saying that, hey, this was the, highlight, right? This was the turning point in their lives that, they decided to take science and engineering, right? So it's very, very important to progress on all these fronts. And once again, I think ISRO has really inspired all of us to do better.
Talking about space tech, last week there was this startup, Dronacharya, They are a drone and aerospace company, and they tested a reusable rocket launch vehicle that reached an altitude of 3 kilometers, and they returned safely using a parachute mechanism.
Nice.
They plan to achieve higher altitudes of 10 to 50 kilometers in the future, and they want to, utilize this to collect atmospheric and meteorological data. Now, for a country like India, where still I think the majority of the population is engaged in some form of agriculture, how important and critical meteorological data can be. And we are competing, with the companies in the West like SpaceX, Leo, Astra. But the advantage which we have is we are operating under a budget. And I think that really brings out the creativity and innovations and also helps us solve problem the way that's rooted in our culture.
Yeah, I think so. ISRO or India, in fact, has some of the cheapest satellite launches, right? Perhaps next only to SpaceX, I suppose, right? Which has reusable rockets. So all of this innovation, it can be commercialized. It will be, in fact, right? I mean, some of these folks like Pixel, for instance, right? I mean, they're already getting contracts and orders, and they're creating this market from the ground up. So this is fantastic. So Dronacharya is an interesting company, right? I mean, interesting name as well, right? Drone Acharya, right? So apparently they called themselves that because they used to do a lot of drone training, and of course, as you know, Dronacharya is the guru of the Pandavas, right, in Mahabharata. They've engaged in manufacturing, training, services, geospatial stuff, bunch of things. I mean, very multi-pronged approach. They've doubled down on manufacturing and training, especially training new drone pilots and so on and so forth. In fact, they listed just about 3 years or 2 years after their founding itself, based on the phenomenal growth that they've achieved. Right, and also I think the public markets may be right to support these kind of companies, because it requires growing at a reasonable pace. I mean, it's not like a VC kind of a business where you kind of grow at that exponential hockey stick curve kind of a thing, right? So maybe it might make sense to grow at a sort of a more public company kind of a pace, right? So having said that, they've grown really, really rapidly, right? I think 22, they probably did more in a quarter than the entire previous year, in fact, right? So again, fantastic stuff. We're going to see, of course, I mean, we saw IdeaForge list as well, right? So yeah, this entire space is something to watch out for.
Moving on, another highlight news from last week was Titan acquiring the remaining stake in Caratlane. Now, Caratlane has around 1,500 employees, of which 400 are part of the corporate team. And of the 400 employees, 75 have shares worth 340 to 380 crore rupees.
Wow. I want to put up that meme, right? Flipkart employees say friendship is over. Caratlane employees.
None of the Flipkart employees reached out.
Yeah.
And not only that, Mithun Sacheti, who is the founder, he made 4,600 plus crores in cash.
Phenomenal.
By selling his startup to Titan.
Yeah. So I've been reading about their journey, and it's just so inspiring, right? I mean, they were one of the earlier .com guys, or consumer internet guys, I should say, right around that Flipkart era, Flipkart, Myntra, Jabong era. Who even remembers Jabong now, right? But anyway, this is a 15, 16-year journey in the making, and Titan first acquired a controlling stake, maybe 25, 26% in 2016. And typically when such a thing happens, right, you kind of write the company off that, hey, it will be sort of relegated to a corner of balance sheet in a large enough company. And then, you go about your way, right? I mean, you become an employee of sorts. But it's fantastic that Mithun and team have stayed and have, compounded all of their learnings and earnings as well. Really good. We often talk about founder market fit, and I think Mithun Sacheti's is one such case, right? Because his is, he comes from a traditional jeweler family, and he wanted to build this online business, having seen what is possible in the US. There was a company called Blue Nile there, right? And he wanted to replicate that model here. And here again, right, I mean, people don't realize the complexities India has. Flipkart is not the Amazon of India, right? Ola is not the Uber of India. India has its own challenges and own complexities, and executing in India is just so hard. So kudos to these guys. They've stayed together for 16 years, and we've seen the growth of Titan itself, right? I mean, fantastic. I was reading this book about Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, and he talks about, of course, one of his most famous investments was in Titan, right? And the MD, Mr. Bhaskar, is a legendary guy, really. And he apparently taught a course in IIM Bangalore where Mithun was, Mithun was one of the students, and that's how this whole connection happened. Initially, they worked with them as a sort of a merchandising platform / sales platform. And then since then, they have their own brand and stuff, right? So they sit along with Tanishq and, the other brands as well that Titan has. So, see, the important lesson net from all of this is that to go long, right? I often say this to people that you get really lucky very, very few times in life, right? For anything significant, whether it is your, spouse, or whether it is your work, or whether it is your vocation, whatever it is. And when you do get lucky, recognize that luck and really compound, right? I mean, really go long on that, because that is the difference between making, a few tens of crores and 4,000 plus crores as Mithun has got, right? So phenomenal. I mean, I'm very, very happy for the team. Do check out this podcast by Aviral Bhatnagar. He spoke to the founders, Mithun and Avnish, some time ago. I highly recommend it. Do check it out. It's a very inspiring journey, and for all the other D2C wannabes, folks who are starting up in that space, tying up with the strategic is not a bad idea. It gives you the scale, it gives you the professionalism to kind of grow. So don't be averse to it. So yeah, if you're a Caratlane employee, then hello.
Well, just to add one point to what you said, right, it's very interesting. Like the entire direction, Titan is also growing as a company. Caratlane is a profitable company. FY23 numbers, profit before tax stands around 48.2 CR, right? And they're growing also at around 33%. Titan right now is expanding into a portfolio of companies that's focusing more on discretionary consumption, right? And with a special focus in jewelry. Like if you look at it, there's Tanishq, there's Mia, Zoya, and now Caratlane. For watches, they have Titan Fast Track, Helios, Eyewear, there's Titan Eye Plus, and they're also entering wearables and dress material.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting how as a company also they are focusing on growth.
It's a phenomenal vision, because see, on hindsight, these things look obvious, right? Obviously, 90s liberalization, people's incomes have been rising and so on and so forth. But then, I mean, to have that sort of vision and really invest in that vision, right? But is just amazing, and there are all of these economical calculations. You guys can check it out, right? That says that for some X increase in per capita income, the discretionary income rises by 10x, right? By an order of magnitude, right? So which means that money is going to go into stuff like this, right? Eyewear, watches, and jewelry and whatnot. And think of how far the entire digital business itself has come, right? I mean, Caratlane and Titan is one of the best omni-channel plays I've ever seen, right? I mean, it's in fact a template for the world, I should say, right?
There was strong digital presence as well as the brick and mortar stores.
Yeah. I mean, I was around a Caratlane store yesterday in Indiranagar, and I just paused to recognize that moment. I mean, it is it's really amazing, because if you told me even 10 years back that someone would pay 30K, 40K, 2 lakhs on a website, right? I wouldn't have bought that, right? But shows that if you really invest in changing consumer behavior, if you understand and if you work with a consumer, it is possible, right? I mean, if you have to be there at the right place at the right time, then you have to be there long enough.
Moving on to some other news, we had discussed that how SEBI is concerned about the rise of the role which Finfluencers play right now in the market, and with respect to that, they published some guidelines, right, to disrupt the revenue model in which Finfluencers earn money, which is through commissions by SEBI registered entities. Now, what SEBI is saying, entities which are registered with SEBI, they are not allowed to operate with Finfluencers. They're not allowed to pay any non-registered entity. And yeah, I think with this, do you think this actually will help curb the spread of misinformation about financial markets?
It'll definitely hurt the Finfluencers for sure, right? Because what SEBI has essentially said is no more commission, no more brokerage, etc., no more affiliate links, all of that stuff. I don't know if there's a way to kind of get around that, but SEBI has said if you're a registered entity, you can't pay these folks for inducements and whatnot, right? And so I was listening to the SEBI chairperson, Ms. Madhavi Puri, talk about this specifically, and she says we definitely need to improve financial literacy in the country. And yes, you have to simplify financial concepts and whatnot. But inducements like become a to quote her, to become a lakpati or a crorepati in X days or Y days kind of thing, right? I mean that kind of hurts because obviously there are no guarantees in the stock market, and SEBI is very very protective of investors, right? So all of those counts. I mean, they had said a month back that consultation paper was in the works, right? And they've kind of come out with that, and they've basically stopped these commissions and brokerage and affiliate fees and whatnot, right? Now, how influencers or finfluencers will operate beyond this, I guess they will figure a new way out of this, but I do think that they do play a role. It's just that it has to be properly regulated and it has to be within limits.
Moving on, it has been a while since we, discussed some big fundraise. And last week, Zepto became a unicorn with the 200 million Series E round, which is led by Stepstone Global. Now, I don't know, for some reason, I thought Zepto was already a unicorn company.
I think they were valued at about 900 million last year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
And now they are 1.4 billion.
Wow,
And we also get this year's first unicorn company.
wow, it's pretty crazy,
Imagine that.
right?
And that too.
Think about 2021, where
Like
every week we
week.
were kind of announcing a unicorn, right? 50 plus, and then we
Right.
said we'll get to 75 plus. But yeah, the world had other plans, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, but still better late than never. And think about this, right? They became a unicorn company, especially in a domain where other companies are struggling so much. They're shutting down dark stores, they are scaling down operations, and but somehow investors still see scope within this domain.
See, quick commerce is seeing some consolidation, right? Obviously, with Zomato, Blinkit, and Swiggy, Genie, and there is Big Basket, which is perhaps the most comprehensive, right? And they offer the same day delivery or like perhaps 1 day delivery. And then there is Swiggy Genie, and Swiggy Genie is of course the 10-minute or 15-minute delivery type, and there's Zepto, which promises a 10-minute delivery, right? Now, it is a very, very challenging business to run. You have all of these dark stores where everything proceeds in assembly line fashion, and operational efficiency is the name of the game, basically, right? It's a hard business also because the margins definitely razor thin margins that they're working on, and they're trying to scale this to a particular volume where things become a lot more lucrative for them, from a economies of scale perspective. But it remains a very challenging space to run.
Moving on, last year, Bangalore's Auto Union came up with their own app to tackle the likes of Ola and Uber because they used to charge a high commission. And this app is doing well. Now it's much more easier to get an auto in Bangalore. But last week, they announced that they'll be charging drivers a subscription fee, right? While it's still nominal, they're charging close to 25 rupees for unlimited trips a day on the driver's side. But they're still following down the path of the likes of Uber and Ola.
No, I think it's a different model altogether, right? I mean, I think they are going with a subscription model and not a commission model as Uber and Ola, right? I mean, we'll see how this kind of pans out. The Namma Yatri app was built by JustPay, which is a private company, somehow tied with the Beacon Foundation run by Mr. Nilekani, I think, right? They work with, the foundation does some interesting work. I mean, they work with open digital protocols to sort of build these applications and so on, right? So, and Namma Yatri is on ONDC as well, right? So, and they've been growing, like you said. I mean, it's easier to get an auto rickshaw on Namma Yatri now than earlier, right, through Uber or Ola. This is just a different business model, and I think this is more viable. I mean, this is more driver friendly, I think, than the commissions. I mean, also no hidden fees and whatnot, right? So let's see how this kind of pans out.
Yeah, one really cool feature in the app is that you can really check the live demand feed, where so like, okay, are you likely to get a cab in this area? It has its own heat map, So I think that's pretty cool. For this week's Talk of the Town, we have this fantastic article put out in Bloom's website. Now, this is a conversation with Arindam Paul, and he shares insider tips on scaling a D2C brand on third-party marketplaces. A fantastic read. We'll have the link in the description below, so please check it out. And while you're on the website, you'll also find transcripts of our own shows on the website, so that it's easier for you to consume the content in a way that you find more suitable. Along with that, Roshan, before we wrap it up, who are we having next on the podcast?
Next on the podcast, we have an investor after a long time, right? So we are hosting Arjun Rao of Special Ventures, and they invest in a lot of early stage core science innovation kind of startups, right? I mean, in fact, they've invested in Agnikul as well. So it'll be interesting to understand their thesis and how they're finding the current market environment and so on. So yeah, certainly looking forward to it.
All right, folks, if you have not already subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Do tag us on social media with your thoughts on some of the things that we discussed today. You can tag us on LinkedIn as the Startup Operator and on X/Twitter. I think we have to change that now. On X, we are at Operator Startup. That's it for this week. We'll be back again with more interesting updates next week.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.